Alright, welcome to today's live stream where I am for the first time unveiling my experience for Firefly from Adobe. So this is their solution for stable diffusion. To have just a quick rundown of what it is that they have planned, it's quite interesting. We only have a few features today, such as text to image. So the interface here is pretty straightforward, although this is all based on Adobe stock. Right, so the results that you can get are very much limited to what Adobe has in their library, and they make it explicitly clear constantly that these images are not for commercial use, that they are for just your own experimentation at this point in time. So that's a whole area that will become quite interesting. Hey there, EM, thanks for dropping in on the chat. At any point, anybody wants to chime in, you're more than welcome to. I'm keeping an eye over here. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to let me know or suggest some things as I'll be going over some of this process. So Inpainting is also something that's very much available now, and they actually came up to calling that generative fill. Smart Portrait is not out yet. Depth to image will be interesting because you could get a depth image like that from different 3D software, as we've seen before here on this channel. And 3D to image, so taking a 3D model to an image, which is also something I've showcased within Blender. Text to template, this will be interesting whether the template actually has text that you can edit, or if at first it'll just be generated text. Conversational editing, so you can have a bit more of a back and forth and get different iterations building on your previous. Now, generating vectors is interesting. It's different from generating images. As you can see, everything's a shape or an object that you can actually take in, and you can scale to any size. It's not a certain resolution or anything. Mixing a bunch of images, also very cool. Color conditioned image generation. So using an image basically to influence the color choices. And upscaling, which we've seen plenty. So a lot of these features you might have seen me go over in Leonardo AI. However, here with their features, they don't have them all released just yet. So we have some that are still in exploration, as they are in Leonardo. But what we have available today is text to image, text effects, generative color, and available since this morning is generative fill. So this is where we can actually brush in and replace certain parts of an image. So we'll take a look at this through text to image first. So most of this is only usable through the browser. So if I hit text to image, I'll take a moment to make myself a little brighter here. In text to image, we have our typical feed of what people are creating, which is really interesting. And I find that, as you can see, like the simpler the prompts in this case, the better the results. I find that the more you specify, even if you go beyond car and you try to specify a certain make of car, still becomes really difficult. So for example, if we were to go with something in this case, such as a car in the shape of a pencil. And we get a first iteration here, but then we can always change our aspect ratio, which is interesting. I'm trying to get rid of this thing on the side for a bit. Which is interesting. We can select over here portrait, square, widescreen. We can select different formats for our image, and you see it changes live into whatever format it is that we need. Yeah, not quite. So if it can only draw from images that exist, right? It's something like you're basically asking for stock imagery that doesn't quite exist. So for example, we could say a jar of metal fluid spilling out, yeah. Now, it doesn't actually exist. What I'm testing here is if it can actually take a different material and apply it in for a liquid. So something like that is kind of what I was asking for, although it's kind of more like motor oil. So Again, your experience may vary, and then we also have an iterative process here, right? I want to find maybe a cool example here. So an abstract 3D object with amorphous. Let's go with something like that. Let's try to create something like an abstract shape. So we can ask for an abstract cube specifically with monochromatic. No, not monochromatic. Let's go with neon CMYK colors. Ooh, type some else. With neon CMYK colors. Blank white background. We're gonna ask for a abstract gradient background. There we go. And we'll try some other stuff that I've been doing in other prompts, such as high detail, 8K, 3D render. Let's try that. So another type of content that we can ask for, we have here no specification on any one of these. We can ask for a photo, a graphic, or art. So if we were to go for photo instead of art, we should be getting some more realistic shading or lighting. And then over under styles, we have a lot of things to pick through. So this can help us out a little bit to get what we want. We can hit all rather than just seeing the popular stuff. And so first we have movements, like art movements, steampunk, synthwave, vaporwave, so on. I'm going to move away from this section, maybe even just click minimalism, actually, because that can apply to photography very well. Themes, we'll go with, as you can see, we have quite a lot here. Digital art. Techniques, we'll leave that blank. Effects, already asked for neon. We'll go with isometric. And materials, clay. And concepts, chaotic, kishi? I've never heard of that before. Nostalgic, beautiful, divine, or simple. Sure. Okay, chaotic and simple. Let's see what. So apparently you can select multiple within the same section. So color and tone, we could do vibrant color. Lighting, we'll do like studio lighting. And finally, composition, we could do a close-up. Generate. So as you can see, it was updating live for a little bit, but as I kept adding parameters that essentially changed the prompt, it has to reconfigure. So that's our current result. So we can iterate upon these by hovering over here and hitting right here, show similar. Essentially, we'd start developing this one. If you want to give any sample prompts into the chat box or give any suggestions of something to try out, we could also do, I'm going to change this front section, abstract gradient background, and we'll actually ask for a product shot of an energy drink. Let's do an energy drink. Product shot of an energy drink. And we'll keep all those same parameters. Okay. So let's say we were to iterate on this one. We go with this. Show similar. Wait a little bit. They see the I think there's like a raised piece of the glass there with a logo. That doesn't quite work. That's interesting. Like rainbow in a bottle. We can show similar from this one. So every time we ask to iterate on a particular option that we get, the others disappear. And so we start to get closer to something that we want. Ideally, each iteration would give us something a little bit better. And, you know, we always want to rate the result that we get because that helps their algorithm, right? It helps their machine work better. So I'm actually pretty good with this result. We can hit, all right, on this one. This one did not come out well, so thumbs down. And we can get over to the generative fill tool just by clicking right here. So now we're in the generative fill. We're asking to insert something, so we'll add in a label. So we'll hit to add, and I'll just paint right in here where I want my label to go. All right. And we'll add in our prompt. So we could add in a label for rainbow in a bottle. Label. I don't know if that's going to be too specific to ask it to say that. Label on a bottle. Hopefully that can help. And then we have some further settings that we have over here. So we can hit match shape, match the image to your selection shape, which would be freeform or conform. So we'll give it freeform. We'll let it read the edges of the original image and do its own thing. I didn't do the cleanest job brushing it in here. Preserve content. How much of the original content will be kept in the generated image? We'll keep some of it. We'll just dial this down. Right now, this is just a slider, right, with no numeric values or anything. But guidance strength, determine how closely the generated content keeps to the prompt. We'll very strictly lean over to the prompt on that. So generate. Okay. So we need a little bit more than that. Oh, so we have different options. We can click through them. This one does start to look like a label, although the text isn't. Well, you know, that's possibly some of the best attempts at getting the right text. Well, we can hit more, see if we can get a better label. So they seem a lot closer than others to cracking custom text. That's pretty neat. We're gonna backtrack here, and or maybe just iterate on one of these. I think I could. I go back. There we go. Like this one seems like it could be leading a little bit better. Oops, I did the wrong feedback. That's all right. We'll keep it. And we'll continue to add, so we'll paint in that same area again. And this time, we're gonna modify our settings a little bit to preserve less content. So that looks like it resets every time we generate. So we'll ask for a plastic label with a white background. See if we can add that in behind the text. Maybe not purely new content, maybe put that a little bit less. And we'll lean that more towards the prompt. And we'll hit generate. Okay. We can go through some options. Definitely want to add in more cues on style and things like that, but we can just cancel and keep what we had, clear our selection there. We can always remove things. So if I wanted to just remove something out of the image, that's always an option. Like if I want to just remove this text and hit remove, it'll basically try to just eliminate that bottom portion, and it should be filling out the rest of the label here. And there we go. We can get rid of that bottom line of text. And this one matches that top shape pretty good, so we'll keep that. All right, that's pretty good. I'm gonna put this in as a thumbnail. That's pretty good. We'll save that to the desktop. And now to look at the last two features that we have over here. So we could do text effects. So this one's fairly quick, and it's kind of a cheat to getting the right text because the Stable Diffusion models have had a really tough time at actually generating AI text, but this is kind of a neat way of doing it. I think what it basically does is it uses the actual letter as the area that the AI is working on, and then generates things around that. So we could do hello world, and we can ask for rocks, trees, ground, moss, greenery, and nature. Generate. And as you can see, we have some more settings all over here. So we have sample prompts, flowers, snake, driftwood, bread, toast, balloon, wires. This worked out really, really good. We have some different options. As always, the way it presents the options, and you kind of sometimes have to wait for it to load a little bit and then to be able to iterate on this as well. But it's a nice system compared to the other ones. Like, it reminds me of how Midjourney works with Discord, except here it's just like one interface. So you just keep sort of like, it feels like it's a much more generative process, right? It feels like you're just clicking through and arriving closer and closer to what you're looking for. So we can also select some fonts, tight, loose. So the advantage that Adobe really has here is they kind of know what they're able to use existing tools that they have for their software, and they know what their users need. That's really cool what the E is doing here with that. That's not a ficus, that's a fern leaf. So I'm not gonna switch any of this. I'm actually just gonna save this one. I'm gonna rate it cool. Yeah, that's the little disclaimer you get every time that it's an AI generated image. You can't claim it. Blah, blah, blah. Read it. Generative color. So this one's quite interesting. So it'll just recolor your SVGs. So SVGs are files that are basically vector files. So I can upload my logo here as an SVG, and I can ask to recolor it. So say I wanted to do something seasonal, right? I want to do blue and teal summer vibes. Yeah, let's just keep it to that. And we hit generate. So our sample prompts here are kind of interesting. It's like salmon sushi, terracotta desert. They're more like color swatches. So something I want to turn off here, because I have black in my logo, is turn off preserve black and white. And that way it fully takes control on modifying the colors. We can choose a different harmony. So you could do like split complementary. And we can also reshuffle the colors that it picked. So if I hit reshuffling over here, that kind of just completely changed the colors. We're there. But yeah, this is pretty... I don't know why. I guess that's locking in whatever was the color before, because this was black. It changes it all to blue, and it doesn't like fade it out, or it doesn't kind of take different tones for different letters, which I guess is a good way to direct it. It's like you want these to stay in the same color group. So again, Adobe is just taking advantage of the fact that they kind of know what their users need just through how the Adobe software is set up. So that's all that's available right now, but there is a bonus, which is Photoshop Beta. And I'm not sure if you're required to have been accepted into the Firefly trial to get this. This might be open to everyone. If not, and you use these tools heavily, I would suggest definitely taking a crack at getting into the alpha or beta. I think we're in the beta for Firefly. And in this Photoshop version, the new beta, I could select this soft and surreal 3D art kit, which I had used previously as sort of an example. So if I wanted these shapes if I wanted to edit these shapes a little bit, right? They are kind of live shapes that I can mess with. But say I wanted to change this gradient a little bit. I wanted to like get rid of this like harsh edge right there for whatever reason, right? What we have in Photoshop Beta is this little interface right here. And it has the buttons for select subject, remove background. What is this? This is create a new adjustment layer, transform the image, and different options and settings that you have now access to right here in this little bar. But when you select something, so say I take my lasso tool and I just select around there, this switches to a button that says generative fill. So if I hit generative fill, I can now prompt inside Photoshop. So I could just say white, pink, and purple gradient. And we hit generate. And so again, it's using the Adobe stock. Like the fact that this is connected to Adobe Creative Cloud, it's using the library of Adobe existing images to basically present me now with options of things that I can place on top of this original image. And it'll give me options as well. There we go. So that's a softer result. I can hit cool. and show something a little bit more interesting, like a photo. So let's drag in a photo. Okay, so say I did, yeah. Okay, so we have Chichen Itza here. Not the main tower, but one that is in that same area. So we could do something to add to this image. So for example, say I like did a little circle around here, and I did generative fill, and I asked for UFO in the style of 70s album art. That was done a lot. And we can hit generate. I wonder if it's going to read that if it's a photo, so it'll try to make it photorealistic, or if it'll just kind of infer that I mean something artistic and do artwork. Okay, so it knows this is a photo. Otherwise, I don't think it would have done something that's photoreal. And you could see it's also matching the lighting. So we get a little shimmer or sheen on the top right over here. Same way we're getting lit on our little structure. And the shadow is in the same place. Even the reflections on the UFO kind of look like what's on the ground here. So that's pretty good. Let's get rid of this logo of mine, for example. Now this is going to make watermarks almost useless, because I can just ask for Mayan stone ruins and greenery. And that raises some concerns, ethical concerns, I suppose. That my position is always like, when the tool comes out, just get over it. It's a tool now, and you can't stop people from doing this. But you know, there's gonna be something, I guess, some disclaimer maybe for the time being, at least with Adobe Firefly things, everything's sort of tagged as having been AI generated. Okay, so it even tried to add in some tourists, I guess because I used the word ruins, but it completely, so just to show you, here's off and then here's on. So it sort of used the plants that were there, but then it just kind of added in its own things and even changed the topography. So I can just circle the people now, and I could just ask for plants and rocks. Maybe I just have to be simpler, and it's taking a lot of information from the existing image and the existing layers. But yeah. I want to try something else after this one, unless there's any, well, not unless, but additional to. This is the last thing I'll be trying out here before we hop off stream. There we go, that's better. So if you want to add any suggestions for this image or something to test before we log off, I'm just going to circle this area here, and I am going to type in light illuminating from cave of ancient Mayan structure, and just see how well it paints light, because that is something that I've covered many times and something that I spent a lot of time doing because of architectural visualization. And if this can totally understand how to add light over the image while keeping the existing image, that'll be interesting. Let's see here. Okay, no, it added people again. So maybe if I say no people, it's inferred. Usually there's a separate space for a negative prompt. Okay, that one doesn't have people, but there's no light, and I asked for light. It's just changing the ruins. Okay, so say we go with the third one. We have those ruins now. That is more interesting, or more sci-fi-ish. Let's try this again. Maybe I'll focus in rather than have such a large area. Just focus in right over here. Light glowing intensely in the daylight from a doorway of a Mayan ruin. do want to try one more thing. That'll be the last thing I do on that photo, but I want to check out a render, like a 3D render. Will it know that it's a rendering and not a photograph? Still going on that. Wow. Saying quite a bit of resources here. So supposedly this is connecting through the internet to the Adobe stock. And I suppose maybe what's taking longer this time, and I don't know until it finishes, but to the point I was referring to earlier, if it doesn't understand now that it's supposed to add in some light and it's doing, I don't know how deep this goes, right? Because they could be pulling from Stable Diffusion and from the Adobe stock library, but Adobe has their own set of 3D tools and rendering tools. So I don't know what role, if any, that extra data systems can play into what it is that we're experiencing here. But yeah, this is taking quite a bit. I wonder if I'm able to open another file as that runs. My guess is no. I gotta wait. Or I could call it stuck. Oh! It keeps trying to add people, and there's no light. So, not sure if that is a limitation right now, that you can't paint in light. But, and definitely getting people when you don't ask for them is becoming an issue. So let's bring in that rendering. So this is, you know, clearly not a photograph if you really look closely. So I'm gonna try and see if perhaps I could add in over here and maybe in 2 areas. Can I? Yeah, so I hold shift and I select 2 areas and I do generative fill and I try adding jets flying with, what are those chemtrails? I know that's what the conspiracy theorists will call them, but I don't know if that's what they're actually called. What's that called? Well, this is starting up. Those highlights are those things that a plane leaves behind. Contrails, short for condensation trails. Well, this will be interesting. So do some word art, Rob? Yeah, we could do some word art. Advanced word art. I don't know what's going on. Well, it is beta. Maybe I have too many layers for this to work properly now. I'm gonna try what I did before of hitting cancel. So it doesn't look like it finished. When I hit cancel, it looks like it just stays half baked. So let me close out my other files. I do want to save this though. Alright, we'll fish it out of the desktop later. Okay. So some word art. Let's check that out. Oh, and the cool thing is these layers are, they're mask layers. So you just kind of turn them off and on. It just sort of blends into the original. Let's try, maybe if I do across this way over the planes. I turn off my planes layer. And I ask for... an exotic name, because it's not going to get text right. An exotic name for architecture project in the style of Microsoft Word Art. Let's put title instead of name. Title for an architecture project in the style of a Microsoft Word art. Doing rocket science here, fellas. Let's see. And with that, I mean, that's what I see in the chat so far, unless there's any more suggestions. We're coming up onto the end of the stream if there's any more questions. Otherwise, just to give you the cliff notes, I'm coming on again tomorrow to do ChatGPT plugins, which is really interesting because now I'm basically having to redo all my existing conversations with ChatGPT with their new function to connect to the internet. So now when you ask it to do something and connect to the internet, it'll actually show you or tell you that it's clicking through links and reading pages and gathering information, which is a fraction of what it's able to do now. So yeah, that'll be the session tomorrow, basically ChatGPT new features and plugins. Photoshop beta is slowing down. Oh, there he goes. So sometimes you just have to click. That's weird word art. Oh my god. This is very aggressive word art. Except for this one. It tried. It's not terrible with words. Architect. That's as close as to architect as we might be able to get. And Ashkargriff. Yep. So yeah, clearly there's a good reason why it's still in beta. But yeah, this takes knowing the software too and knowing the tools. But thanks everyone for tuning in. That concludes our session today for what Firefly can do, and we see that with the release of the generative fill tool into Firefly, they've gone ahead and embedded it within Photoshop. I'm guessing they use the existing Stable Diffusion plugin that's been around for Photoshop or implemented their own. Either way, exciting things are coming here into the world of Adobe as they're catching up quick to all this emerging tech. So really, really exciting. Check you out on the next one. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and I hope you have a good night.